But blue ocean, red ocean type stuff. MSP's a red ocean, 100%. If you're out there just doing support, break, fix, all that kind of stuff, there's just so much competition. You end up with everybody racing to the bottom dollar. And I can't stand in those rooms and win. I won't ever stand in those rooms and win. So then that blue ocean for me becomes more of a consulting and advisory thing because we are unique. I don't know of any other MSPs that carry the level of experience and pedigree that we have across disciplines and years of experience and depth and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's something that if we look at everybody in the business, in our business, carries a unique ability. But if we look at us as an aggregate, what is IntegriTech's unique ability? I think there's definitely something to that, where that consultative approach, because that's, there's really, I think, a lot more dollars to be captured there than what we really even realize right now. And if we can get in those rooms and meet those people, that there's a ton of value to them, which then turns into revenue for us.
Welcome, Jason, today. And Jason, tell me, how did you find yourself in this crazy MSP world?
Well, so I started this business with Alan in 2017, my business partner. We launched from our corporate careers to serve our local community. We've been here and had roots in Northwest Arkansas our entire lives. And the Lord just led us on this path to jump ship on the corporate, I don't know, you can call it a rat race, that pace of things that was there. It was good, great experience, but we really had a heart to serve the smaller business community in our area because it's the lifeblood of what goes on in our economy. So
that's awesome. Now listen, they always say, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics. You know what? If you'll allow it, I'm gonna kind of go against that advice for a second. So I always joke I'm a recovering Catholic. And as Catholics, we get a whole different version of religion than the next group of people. I've oftentimes heard people say, the Lord has called me. And I know people are very genuine in that. And I feel it when they say it. I can actually feel it. What does it mean to you to say, the Lord called me to this thing? Do you mind going down this path a little bit? I think it's important.
Love to, man. Yeah, it's my purpose, right?
Yeah.
So we, Alan and I both served our churches, in IT and AV ministries. He went to a church up in Rogers and I went to a church in Springdale at the time. And so there's always a need for technology, right? And so we saw ourselves get plugged in within the ministry there. And then the Lord grew our skill sets because at corporate, it's publicly traded. You're handcuffed on what you can touch. So we really leveraged what we were able to do in volunteer roles to expand our skill sets pretty wide and pretty deep. Because if you're free, you can do anything, right? So the church staff is like, man, go get it. So we really, through those experiences, it grew our corporate careers too. It was kind of a flywheel, right? So we scaled up our corporate titles and responsibilities with the lab type environment we had at our churches. And we were able to, work through a lot of those things together, collaborate with each other through that journey. And we were shoulder to shoulder at corporate for close to 15 years. Where I was a storage guy handling petabytes of capacity and he was the guy asking for, and originally it was GBs and then it became TBs towards the end of our life cycle there, where the carving the lunds and things out of the sand there. But yeah, leadership changed multiple times when we were at corporate. He and I always had this calling, to serve. And so we looked at culture, looked at the shifts that happened. And then there was one kind of towards the end that was like, okay, this is kind of the writing on the wall. We prayed over it. And we went to lunch regularly and kind of talked through this, what if we launched a business and did this thing. And he led us, down this pathway. The Lord led us in this pathway of, we got at the university down here, there's it's the government funded, I think, like consulting pathway to launch a small business. So we took them up on that and they kind of helped us develop a business plan based on what we were trying to achieve. We didn't really know MSP as a space because we were sheltered at corporate our entire careers. And so we got to learn a little bit about what that looked like in the market. We knew we had the skill set technically. We were very technical, able to, problem solve almost anything. And that's what got us where we were at the office in the day to day. And so we were, able to jump out and do this. And it's, it wasn't necessarily a leap of faith. It was a step. I had peace and that whole, the peace that passes all understanding. And, Philippians is 100% true. I worked that job and I wanted to. I was a lifer, man. I knew I was going to be a lifer. I was going to be 35 years at corporate, hang a plaque on the wall, heading to the deep carpet, having responsibilities and all these things. Because, I mean, my story with my mom, she worked at Tyson when I was born. Basically, I've been a part of Tyson my entire life up to that point. And so, I really felt that that was going to be the thing, but then this thing shifted towards the end and I boxed up all my stuff. I gave 6 weeks notice to turn over the two departments that I had. And I walked out, and it really was, very comforting to know that this was where I was supposed to be. And I knew it, and I didn't know what was ahead of me. But I knew I was supposed to be on this journey, and it's been a lot of blessings along the way because we're able to run this business in a way that we can unashamedly, proclaim our faith in everything that we do, give credit where it's due, and serve, humbly everybody
You
that we
know,
can in this area that we're able to connect with.
I
So,
got to acknowledge two things in there. One of them just kind of funny. It took me a second to clock what you meant by head towards the deeper carpets. That's hilarious. Meaning the plush offices
yeah, yeah,
elsewhere.
yeah,
That's awesome. And the other, this notion of, peacefulness. I'm gonna follow up on that a little bit. So, in anyone or many people starting a business, especially coming from a secure, great paycheck, great work environment, whatever it may be, to saying, hey, we're going all in, we're going to put it all, on the line here. When you say you had peacefulness, you were calm through that. You were peace through that. Where wasn't a bunch of maybe anxiety or fear. It was just, now it's supposed to be here. Am I hearing that right?
yeah. I mean, a piece in the initial decision. Obviously, we're 7 years in, and it's funny. We didn't know a lot about business because we had departments for stuff. I had a purchasing department. I had a contract management department. I had a treasury department. Yeah, all the things, right? So there's a lot of hard in the journey, right? The technical side, I think I've referenced the E-Myth book before. So much me. Like I was the guy that could solve, I was the nerd knob guy. I dig deep, grind the gears, make the stuff happen in the trenches, right? That was me. The businessing part, like understanding what cash flow is and, profitability and that was never something I had any concept of from, my corporate world, but there's still peace in it because, it's funny. My wife, early on in this journey, she gave me a scripture, Psalm 119, and it's, I'm a lamp unto your feet, a light unto your path, right? It's a step at a time. She'd always tell me it's not a mag light, it's a lamp. Just keep walking, right? And that was, her message. And, Jesus says, in this world we will have struggles, but, take heart, I've overcome the world. We are all the time fighting battles. And it's okay because I know who fights with me and all of this, and we'll have failures. We've not made the every step perfect in the journey, but he's been good through all of it, and we're really blessed to be where we're at today. Far different than where we launched, and have grown and learned a lot on the path that we've been on.
That peacefulness and that scripture that helps guide you, and recognizing that we're gonna not make every decision and we'll have some failures. I think that's the part that, I can find myself in it. I recognize it in my own clients is we don't make the best decision when we're scared. We don't make the best decision when we're uncertain about what the implication could be in the short term. And I think a lot of times that's where many of us, you know, come to the table. It's this happened. I need to react to that. Now I'm going to make this decision. I think, yeah, if you are kind of blessed with that, like sense of peace that, hey, I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm where I'm on the path I'm supposed to be on. Those tribulations, those challenges don't hit you as hard emotionally and can maybe potentially cycle you into some poor decision making. Does that check
Mhm.
out with you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's that foundational base of like, you know, our motivation is service, right? I mean, I think I told you about EOS. We've gone through and kind of that statement of what we do, what our purpose is we serve people, solve problems, and stretch possibilities, and that whole thing about making mistakes along the journey, I think it's Romans 8:28, where, it says, you're, trying to think. It's turn your mess into your message, basically. I mean, he makes all things good for those who are called according to his purpose, right? And so, like, that's the whole thing. Like, we want to serve with his purpose, And even in those mistakes that we make, he can turn those things into good experiences. It's you win or you learn kind of attitude, right? I mean, we try to take that approach to everything and be positive and assume positive intent with stuff. I mean, we've been burned. We've had, experiences, things that we look back and we've learned from and grown from, but every part of it's made us who we are today. That's how we got to
Yeah.
look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll share this. Several faces come to mind. There's two gentlemen that are clients, and they're two men that are just have a very very deep faith. They're not ashamed or embarrassed or hesitant to talk about it, uh, and you can just kind of feel it with who they are. It's a really cool feeling. They're probably the two most successful MSPs that we work with on a regular basis. And I oftentimes, and one of them in particular, just as close to wealthy as you can get. And um, it's just as I look at hundreds, thousands of businesses, you're always looking for that. What is that factor that's getting them where it is? And I'm not sure I'm entirely qualified to say it's their faith, it's something else, it's their market, but it cannot be ignored either
Mhm.
for sure.
I
And
agree.
yeah, the one who was is very very financially successful. I love sharing this story about him because it was, he loves toys and he loves his planes, and he had a wonderful plane, and probably $1 million, $800,000 plane. He's a great pilot, and he called me. This was every bit of 7 years ago, and he said, "Josh, I'm getting a jet." I said, "Oh man, that's awesome. Good for you. That's a big step." And he said, "I know it's, here's the reasons why. Here's how I'm going to pay for it. And this is, I think it's about 5 or 6 years, and I'll be there, but I have to really plan this." And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds great." And kind of talked through his plans. And he said, "But, the hardest part is I can't do this until everyone in my business makes over, at the time it was like $50,000 a year." And I was
Mhm.
like, "Man, that's really cool. Like, that's a cool acknowledgement that you're here for a bigger purpose. You got to take care of the people." And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be hard. It's why it's gonna take so long." And I was like, "All right, man, we'll get after it." And it wasn't 8 weeks later. He's like, "Hey, I got that jet already. I just didn't want to wait. I just gave everyone a raise, and I just figured it'll take care of itself later." And sure enough,
Very
it's
cool.
come to fruition beautifully. And
Yeah.
we're talking like 80 employees, so it's a
That's
big,
awesome.
big. Yeah, it's really
That's
cool.
awesome, man. Yeah.
Whatever his guiding principles were there.
Yeah, absolutely. And our pastor says, honor him and he'll honor you, you know?
Yeah,
And,
right
and
on.
we went through a series where pastor preached on, um, it was First Chronicles 4, I think, or maybe Second Chronicles. It was, the there was a prayer in there that the prayer of J. Oh man, I'm not going to get it right now. But anyway, on the spot, I can't pull names. But he basically just says, "Pray big things, expect big things," kind of thing, right? And that's kind of that whole thing is like, to much is given, much is expected. And so, we try to walk in all those principles. There's tons of, I mean, whether you're religious or not, the Bible's full of a lot of good truth, and a lot of good, principles that I think we can use as a guiding light, on all our journeys and taking care of your people. That's key. That's who we
Yeah.
are and how we got here. It was just me in an office when I first started. I turned a key, sat in a chair, waited on the phone to ring, and did everything, and did a lot of it poorly, unless it was a very technical thing. And so now that we're where we're at, we look around and we get to see all the people who bring their unique ability to us, and we get to leverage that, for serving our client base and really serving one another as we do it. It's a team that pulls it off, and the less I do, the better we get. That's kind of what
Y-
I'm realizing.
it is funny because we have had some discussions, and I am very aware of the successes that you guys have had. And 7 years, it's not nothing. Like, that's a real amount of time, but the success you all have had in 7 years really outpaces what a lot of people are able to do in that 7 years. One of the things I think I'm recognizing in you, and your friends and family will know if I'm right or not, is you do have this kind of humility to you of, and I wonder, if life had to beat that into you, because, let's be honest, high level technical people are not necessarily known for their humility. You come out of an environment at Tyson's where you are doing big things, big data. You're the guy, and you come out into the non-corporate world and you say, "Oh, you're served best if you say, I don't know anything." But I don't know that everyone actually comes to a place that easily. What were some of those lessons that had to kind of if they needed to, were there any lessons that needed to humble you pretty quickly in that journey?
Yeah, I mean, when I was at corporate, I carried a brand. Everybody's got a brand, right, for themselves, and so very technical. As an architect, and I had a lot of really great experiences. Looking back, God did amazing things in my journey. Sitting on a board with IBM, technical counsel, and doing a lot of really neat experiences that just enriched my technical skill set immensely. However, through all that, I never lost the grip of where I came from. I was a tape slinger, man. I started in the basement slinging tapes hourly. And, I climbed the ladder one rung at a time. And so I never lost sight of that. So I tried to walk with humility in everything I did, even at corporate, whenever I was running a couple of departments, doing my thing, whatever. I just was out to serve and do the best that I could for my team and my company. Um, this journey it's funny because I launched into this and I was like, I'm a fairly humble guy. It's funny to say, like the pride and the humility of yourself, almost kind of thing. It's that kind of deal, but it has been humbling in a lot of ways, and most of it hasn't necessarily been technical. It's been in the lack of a grasp of running a business, understanding, you know. Budgets and understanding, guidelines and just the norms of, like I was saying, cash flow and net terms and these things that we've got to operate within is just, I tell people I don't have a college degree, but I paid for 5 of them, and one I've had to learn in lessons in business, right? Is because, you lose money, in these things if you're not approaching it right. And it's funny how you can give two business owners the same amount of resources and they can have two totally different outcomes because how it's really stewarded, really. And I was a poor steward, to be honest, on the front end of the business with things because I came with a corporate mentality that we had budgets and things, but we really had so much, leeway, because it's a big ship and, things turn and quarters release and budgets change, but you always had enough pads, so to speak, with that. It's razor thin in a small business space where, you're on the line, and so it's, definitely looking back, like Alan and I both have thought like, yeah, we made a lot of mistakes. We could have done things a lot better, but all that's made us who we are now. And we have to always come out of it with a positive lesson learned and avoid the mistake in the future, and just be better from it. And in some cases, you welcome the mistake because it's a smaller mistake now. I mean, that's kind of part of it too. If you want to look at the positive side, that was something that we really have been like, man, it's best that we did this now and not when we're 50 heads or 100 heads or whatever we're going to, for the growth side of it.
Yeah, for sure. And so as you mentioned participating at I think it was like a local facility had some training and mentorship for you guys. Was that something that you found on day zero, or is that something you found a year in? When did you start participating in that?
The training, so Alan does there's Arkansas has training for our people. I haven't been able to participate in that directly though. Some of the training that I've gotten when I was at corporate was leadership type training that we did,
Hmm.
that corporate supplied for us. And that was more interaction, personality, like Berkman kind of things that we did there. And that was something, um, through the journey, a lot of that training was at corporate where, they taught us how to work as a team better, did specific technical skill sets too. Hang on one sec.
Hmm. Yeah, I thought there was something about I was envisioning like an SBA office or something like that you guys participated in a formal program. I must have
Ah,
misunderstood.
yeah, no, you're good. Okay, I forgot about, yeah. So when we launched, the University of Arkansas had and I'm an acronym guy, but this is a mouthful, ASBTDC. So Arkansas Small Business Technology Development Center. And so we went through them. That's right. And so they did coach us on a business plan, which is kind of funny because when we approached them and said, hey, we carry 35 years of Fortune 100 IT, we're wanting to launch an IT shop, da 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 da, they almost just were like, step back and said, you guys have more experience than anybody when you're coming to launch a business. Nobody's had this much experience to launch a business before coming through a program like this. But we totally missed the lack of business acumen in that, right? We're so focused on we have the skill to do the thing. We don't have the skill to run the thing that does the thing. And so we launched it on paper. It was hilarious. We go back and look at that, Alan and I, and it's like that spreadsheet is a joke. Had we done it, we would have failed. That was the other part. Like if we would have had the success we planned in 18 months, it would have crushed us completely. And so that definitely, there was some good pieces of it. It gave us some resources, and some stuff like that, as far as like they were able to pull lists and like market research type stuff. And we were able to kind of put eyes on what our competitive landscape might look like, or some key things in the area that were happening that we could leverage. But they really saw us as like, hey, you guys have all this technical know-how. You're going to have no problem. Well, the problems weren't with the technical. Like we can solve those issues. The problems is nobody knows who I am. I'm 5 years in business and nobody knows who I am. 7 years in business and people are just now like, oh, I've heard of you. And so that's where, and we're getting better. That, you had said earlier, I think in 7 years, we've gone further than others, some others you've talked to in 7 years. And man, really that story almost just begins 2 years ago for us. Because for 5 years, we were just, scratch and claw and, trying to figure out, month at a time what we're doing. What is it? We know we can support things. We know we can fix things, but it was like fire to fire, constantly working on stuff and not really planning and predicting appropriately, and having that vision of what the future needs to be and then making it happen.
One of the things we see, and I think partnerships oftentimes get kind of a bad rap, and probably deservedly so many times. But as I look back historically and I look in current state, I think many, if the partnership is even remotely good, it's a force multiplier. One of the things, like we're working with a client right now that has three owners, two very active, one more kind of figurehead. And for the last several years, they've all just been doing everything, and they're just kind of working themselves to death. And there's no clear line of who's responsible for what. And we're kind of unwinding that a little right now. But I've often seen when a partnership is like, hey, I do this and I promise you I'll do my best to deliver X, and you'll do that and you'll deliver Y. That partnership is a beautiful thing. How have you and Alan kind of walked through that to say, how are we going to divide these tasks, both on who's most interested or willing and who's most maybe even qualified? How have you
Mhm.
guys kind of walked through that?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Like when we launched the business, it was 50-50, me and Alan. In the ASB we sat through some panels and they're like, we had people give us feedback and say, that's not going to work. You can't have a 50-50 partnership. And the way I tell people is it's 100% God's business. It's 50-50, me and him running it. That's it. We're stewarding this thing. It's God's business. And so I have a special set of skills that the Lord blessed me with. Alan, likewise. When we were at corporate, he was my spreadsheet guy. So when we competed with cloud and on-prem data center stuff or whatever, he was the dude that worked up the sheets, did the numbers, handled all that. So he naturally drifted, even though he was technical. I probably had an edge out on him on that. And so we kind of landed in the right spots, knowing where we would be here. And so he's more back office, HR. I was a manager, but I was not like, I'm a softie. So it's like, he gives really direct feedback and I'll dance around it. Like we balance each other really well. And if you look back in my corporate career and my, coworkers and friends and all the things, me and Alan weren't exactly the closest necessarily. Like we didn't
Really?
hang out a ton outside of projecting together, or the work stuff that we did or the church stuff that we did, things like that. It wasn't like we were going out to lunch regularly and just hanging out, or spending time together on weekend, things like that. It was really, a lot of it was around work type things or whatever. And so when we launched the partnership, it was like it did make sense. I mean, we really took that lens of it and said, okay, we balance each other well right out the gate. I can tell like these are the buckets we're going to land in. And we've balanced each other and complemented each other really well through the journey. And
No,
he's held me up when I've been down, and I've done the same for him.
that's huge. That's really huge. All right, let's go back to the moment, because you're both getting a paycheck with the same company name on it. You're both going to the church. At some point, somebody had to say, "Hey, you want to start a business?" Like, what was that moment like, and how real did that feel, or how long did it take to feel real?
Yeah, so when I went through probably 5 CEO changes at corporate. Leadership stuff that happened, the deep carpet, carousel, and that disruption is normal, right? You get a new exec and they shake things out, reorg, do different things, and we weathered a lot of that. We had a great C-suite rep, kind of VP guy over our area in IT. He umbrella sheltered us from a lot of that crazy, where we could just focus and do what we needed to do for the business. And towards the end, I mean, the '08 crash happened, right? And then, like I say, I've been around corporate my entire life. I mean, from the time I was knee high to a grasshopper, I was there. My mom booked truckloads. I'd get picked up after kindergarten. And I remember, Buddy Ray and Leland and Don and the old guard that ran the business back in the '80s. And when the '08 thing hit, they brought in Leland as a temp interim CEO. And, he started to really, buckle down and get the company kind of turned around. And he brought in Donnie at the time and started grooming Donnie for the CEO role. And Donnie is an amazing Christian, humble leader. The guy's incredible. I've never been closer. I've never seen that type of leadership that close up until that point.
Mm,
So he came in and transformed everything for us. And, we went, I think stock low, my options low were like $4.91 a share. And he took us to 70 some bucks a share. Like, the
wow.
guy is a motivator and he's a multiplier, and he is like Paul in scripture, like all things to all people. He can enter a room with Wall Street, speak to the room, whatever, right? Same thing with guys working in a feed mill or whatever, which is where he originally came from, a feed mill back in the day. But anyway, that moment is, we have all the success, and then we see some things change, ownership shares shift, board seats, this, that, and the other. And it was announced that Donnie was on his 1 year out. And I'm like, this just doesn't math out for me. And so me and Alan had been kicking around the idea for a long time, but whenever that announcement came out that Donnie was going to be leaving, that was when IntegriTech hit paper. That
Hmm.
was the moment that we sat down and we started doing intentional lunch times together to build some kind of a plan, come up with a name, and work on our strategy to build our own, future together outside of that. So yeah,
Yeah,
that was it,
interesting.
and it's
So,
very, very crystal clear. Like, I can point right back to it. Absolutely.
that's awesome. So you guys were kind of, what'd you say, like 08, 09? Or
So '08,
what?
'09 is when Donnie came in and
Yeah,
turned the company around.
right,
17 was about the time that we ended up, exiting. We were probably making plans 15, 16,
right.
talking. And then really 17 was, I think, January of 17. I could go back and look it up when it was announced and stuff, but I think January 17 was when it was announced Donnie had 1 year remaining. And it didn't compute, and I'm like, this is not this weird. So we put it on paper. We got the business on, like, official on paper filed September of that year. And then I opened the office June 18th of 18. After my notice, I left on a Friday and walked in on a Monday. And on a Tuesday, we got a call from a guy I still have as a customer today, best customer we got. He called me second day in the office, and we picked him up then and have grown with him, since then. So.
That's excellent.
We'll be right back with more, but first, here's a quick message from Bering McKinley.
Most MSPs are constantly busy, chasing tickets, projects, and fires. But without structure, it's hard to know if the business is really improving. Vision from Bering McKinley is the system that helps you work on your business, not just in it. It connects leadership strategy with daily execution. Vision aligns people, process, and performance, creating clarity and rhythm from goals to results. And the Vision app brings that structure to life, helping you create policies, track goals, review KPIs, and collaborate with your BMK consultant all in one place. Behind it all, Jetson AI, your assistant inside Vision, helps you find answers, generate insights, and take action faster. With vision, you gain visibility, accountability, and measurable growth. You're not guessing, you're improving. Vision, Jetson, and the Vision app, your path from strategy to results. Start transforming your business today.
All right, let's get back to the conversation.
That's excellent. So, you obviously had the technical handled. You got some great counsel early on, just kind of business structure, and you guys were thinking about the right things. It seems oftentimes an MSP kind of reaches this plateau of that we're delivering great service, we're making enough money to feed our families, but we're just not growing the way we want to grow. Some just kind of kick it around and just kind of live in that for a long time. Others start trying things, trying, failing, winning, losing, all sorts. Have you all reached that point yet where you're saying, okay, we got here, how do we get there?
Yeah, so like I say, the first several years of the business was really just, it was hard. And on that, another, these milestone moments. And actually, I traveled for business here a couple of weeks back, and I journaled a lot of like the God stories in business and all the things he's shown up in and the things we've done. But in November 21 was one of those moments where we sat down, me and Alan, in the conference room. He looks across the table at me. He's like, Jason, you realized when we were at corporate, you would not have touched a help desk job. I'm like, no, I was offered it, and I bypassed that, went straight into sysadmin world, and then became an architect. And he's like, you realize we've created a help desk company, and you're a help desk guy. And I was like, okay, that's a gut punch, bro. So we really was like, at that point, we just decided, okay, we've created jobs. We have to build a business. Like there is a difference to that. And so what does that mean? So we made a couple of strategic shifts with our services, how we offered them, how we sold and presented them, which made it more consumable with our model, and how we, price package profit is a Nigel thing. And it's a book that Tech Tribe. So we got hooked up with them, started really changing kind of our paradigm some on how we approach this business. And then that began the shift. And then 21, we started kind of turning with intentional effort over time, making it more into systems and processes, people, and not me and him just, fighting the fight every day we come in, turn the key on the door. And, that was a big one. There's a couple of other ones through the journey, that the sales thing I think we talked about too, getting intentional sales going, where business wasn't just happening through referrals, but we were intentionally and strategically approaching growth for the business, and not just serving on a daily what we could, and then what came at us new we just took on. And it was this organic kind of thing. It was really, and that was in 23 was when we made that decision. We launched in 24 with that sales organization, and that's hockey sticked us completely, with that change.
That's where you started actually having somebody go out and call and try to set appointments and whatnot. And how was that? So now there is kind of this like very different sales track of, hey, you've called me because someone recommended you. Now we already know the starting point of the conversation. Now you've got somebody saying, hey, here's a stranger, go meet with them.
Mhm.
How did that transition go for you? Did you recognize that difference? Did it feel different, or was it just more the same for you?
It felt different because, when you get a referral, you're riding on trust. Like whatever relationship pre-existed that you were connected through, and you immediately, you may not have full credibility, but you got some, right? And so, like I say before, nobody knew our brand, nobody knew IntegriTech. I mean, Jason, at corporate had this brand like I would solve all problems, and then as IntegriTech, I'm just this, big bearded dude that walks in the room if you don't know me and you have no clue what's going on, and I'm looking just like everybody else starting off. It was different because for us, I'm not a salesperson. I mean, I have a passion for technology. I love to talk about technology, but I was not a gifted, spokesperson or anything like that. But I would walk into these meetings and just tell them our story, and try to speak to their needs and listen and understand, like, what is it that we can do to shift, away from the problems that they're experiencing into solutions that we can create. And over time I got better. It took me several months to figure out how to work through, um, the process of sales. We're still fine tuning it, but we developed it from nothing when we first started. When the phone rang and I had an appointment set and I went out there, I had nothing. I had no paperwork to leave them. It was just me in a room talking to them about what we can do. And so it took 8 months for us to really go through the appointment thing. And that's probably 4 appointments a month that I sat down with people taking swings. And it's timing and all that, right? Because it's not a referral. It's not a need coming from them. It's us pursuing the other direction. So
Right.
we naturally attributed some of that, low hit rate, if you will, to timing and different things like that. But over, as we got out more and I did more of it, I got better at it, and we started, creating materials and processes around it all. And so we've seen some good success from it.
Yeah, it's tough for anyone. I think I'd layer an extra bit of toughness, a difficulty level for you with your background, where you got to lead a majority of your career just saying, "What work do you want me to do now? Here's some ideas for the C-suite. Here's what the technology demands," to, "Oh, now I have to take a stranger, build that trust, and actually ask for the deal." That's
Mhm.
that's that's tough, man.
Yeah, the whole differentiator piece too, because a lot of small businesses, and we're getting better at it. You start early and it's like you'll take anything you can get just to bring revenue in the door. We're getting to that point now where we're starting to make healthier decisions on the client base and I say it's pruning, it's biblical, right? I mean, we can go back in our client base and say there's a misalignment. We're growing. This is the direction we're going. If this doesn't align, I love to have customers come to us and say, we need more of you. We need more of the expertise. We want to tap into the 58 years of Fortune 100 experience you guys have in house to guide our business and grow. And they look at technology as a true investment, not an expense, on a GL, right? That they're running and having to mitigate costs. They want to press into it and invest properly. And then for us, we want to spend everybody's money like it's our own. But yeah, you have to win that trust and stand out. How do you enter the room one of many and leave the room one of one? And we can leave a pretty decent impression just speaking about our pedigree and some of the stories, but you can also get lost on those people because they're like, yeah, that's, billions of dollars a company with millions of dollars of budget when they're a small business. But at the end of the day, it's all a ratio. Like sure, I had a bigger budget, but I had bigger problems than my budget allowed, just like every company faces. And so we have got to prioritize appropriately, understand and strategize things for the customer, and really speaking in terms of, like, we ran departments, so understanding CapEx versus OpEx. I'm not just a guy who's going to fix your computer. We can also kind of strategically sit alongside, your leadership and help guide decisions in software purchases and vendor relationships and things like that. There's value in that. And when customers really understand that and they can pull that out of us, that's the best relationships we can get. But getting to that point, it takes the right type of customer, and it can't be, I just want the cheapest thing. Cause if that's the case, I'm not your guy ever. I'm not the most expensive out there, but I'm not the cheapest. I'll tell people I'll bring you the best value. And for me to retain the right people, I got to charge the right number so that I can hire the right people and build the right business.
I think a lot of MSPs want that seat at the table where they can be viewed as an advisor and really kind of help plan around the problem or plan around the idea. And I think it's very frustrating that for many of their clients, that table may not even exist, let alone you being able to sit at it. Uh, does does the table existing or the invitation to sit at the table, does that begin to define your ideal client profile? Or is it, hey, we'll start with you when that table doesn't even exist. Hopefully we'll build the table and by naturally have a seat at it, but you've got to see that in that potential client, I suppose. How does that work for you all?
Yeah, we're not at a point as an MSP just to select client bases that only have this strategic vision and investment capability where the table already exists. So, we've got our minimums, we've got our ICPs, we've got our industries and different things, right, that we're looking for. But we do want to grow them. I mean, honestly, like the customer we still have, the one I mentioned called me day 2 in the office. They were 15 people. They had a simple VPN problem and they couldn't get it fixed with who they were working with. So they called me and I fixed it the next day. And so they're like, okay, cool. Took my card. They went from 15 and now they're 130, I think, heads. And they're in multiple states. And so we've helped them scale. We've supplied all the technology and all that stuff. And they very much tap into our kind of like expertise for that. We're actually trying to formalize a vCIO type SKU for IntegriTech because we have the experience and pedigree that we have to go and sit in these rooms and do these things. But the smaller businesses that are in a growth pattern that really do want to do that correctly and kind of get there, right? They've got the vision and those goals in mind. We can help them get there. And then we can help them build the table with a seat for us there when we get there, when they understand and grasp it, right? When we partner with a company, we come in, and they had an internal IT guy and he retired. And then we walk in and we look at their budget and they throw it all open, high trust, right? Here's all my stuff. And we can come in and say, this is overlap. This is duplicate. We can cut this, we can trim, with that client. I think we saved close to 30% of our own like fee monthly with offset costs that we went and saved expenses on for software they didn't need or other systems and things, and moved them from on-premise to cloud for some services and shaved their telco bills because nobody ever pays attention to those, right? Just things like that we want to come in, but then you earn that seat at the table that way, and you help them grow to the point where they're like, oh, I see this investment. My church began with zero IT, and my wife and I, donated a bunch of equipment, and then they came to the table with some things. We built the campus IT, and then it was about 2 years later where we finally got to the point where they're like, okay, now there's a budget for IT, a line item for it in the budget. And then it started to grow from there. I mean, sometimes you just got to go in there and make it happen. And it's hard, but it's also well worth it when you get there and they kind of click, they see the vision. And then I think there's an extra level of appreciation that you naturally get in that relationship for helping them get to there where they see the value in it,
Yeah. Now that vCIO seat, that's been a riddle for people, for a decade and a half now, and I think people are probably many of them are doing a really good job at it. You mentioned that for you've got a SKU for it, which I love. Is that are there some criteria that you apply in your own mind to say this person will probably appreciate it, this person needs it but may not appreciate it, because you probably don't have vCIO with every one of your clients. How do you go through that decision process to even present that type of offering?
Yeah, we're building the SKU right now. We kind of had something several years ago where we were just like, we'll throw it in, right? Kind of a deal. That was not the right approach. And it ended up where we started when we hired more people, and it was always Jason being the CIO guy, then it was that resource that was too constrained. So we ended up we had one guy that was kind of using it. And we just trying to talk to him about it. They didn't really, they didn't see, the value in it as much, and just kind of got to a point where like, all right, we'll shave that expense and we'll come back and visit. But we're working on building that SKU currently, hoping to launch first part of 26. Now that I've got several guys with enterprise experience, we can take a few of us and kind of round robin that across our customer base and go out and sell it. But like what you're saying, I had a customer conversation like 3 weeks ago. I reached out just on a normal kind of cadence, and she's like, hey, Jason, I need to get with you because we need, a brain like yours on the stuff we're doing with our executive leadership team. They're doing a big Salesforce project, and there's a lot of, expenses they're staring down the barrel of. They want to make sure that they're placing these technologies correctly, and they're thinking of integrations and limitations and different things. Those, that's an obvious one. She's asking for it before I even have a SKU for it. So she's one that we're kind of modeling this after. And, the who makes the cut or not, it really is like, there's got to be a budget available, but it's also, will they respect the decisions and will we carry weight in the room, or are we just an empty voice that is going to get overrun, right? I really hope to see us work this into positions, where we are working with an internal IT team. And I know that there's natural kind of, it can be headbutting there, but really, sorry. But really, I want to help guide that because I don't know if there's a lot of resources out there that can really guide an IT division, and have the experience that we have and the resources that we have. I think some of these businesses that get these, because in a small business, you can give any title to a guy for IT, right? And so, hang on one sec.
Yeah.
My voice starting to get to me, man. But these guys will get these titles, and I see like a CTO or a CIO for this like 3-man shop, and I'm like, man, like, if that's carrying a C title, that's a pretty good salary, probably. Could we come in if that person rolls out, and rather than rehiring somebody, I'm not looking to replace anybody, but if you go to, roll that person out, could you vCIO, and then we can help steer the internals? There was a customer years ago, had 5 internal IT guys, and he was our director, and I built a relationship with him, and he called me and he's like, Jason, I spent $150,000 on Dell hardware. They came out and set it up, and every time this one switch goes down in the stack, everything dies. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And so I went out, did analysis of his infrastructure, and said, yeah, your VMware and vNIC setups, and got into the details. And I said, really, man, just pull these 3 cables, move them to these spots, switch them this way. And then if your switch goes down, you're totally good. And so, there's guidance like that, I think, that we can give at that level. Or, they're making these big investments. It's a 6-figure investment. They have a budget. They've got an IT department. Like, having a sounding board, having somebody who has the experience we have to come in and sit in the room, not necessarily steer everything and just command and control, but just be, a voice in the room that carries some weight and carries some influence based on our background and history and experience, that we can just really help. I mean, that really comes down to just, my old boss used to joke. He's like, people helping people. That's all we do. People helping people. And it's really when it fundamentally comes down to it, what we want to do. But we've got, like I said, I think we got a little over 40 recurring customers right now. If I was to just roughshod guess who is eligible out of that list for like what we're looking for vCIO, I'd say there's maybe 5 on that roster that would fit that bill. And then as we, that whole Dan Sullivan principle, 10x easier than 2x, and you get that 20/80 thing, you always work, right? You get that top 20%, the farm league, the really most profitable, best customer partner that you've got. You work through that and you grow that, and then it stratifies, and then you do the 20%, and you continue to do that. Hopefully they become where 50% of our customers are eligible for those kind of things, because we've just elevated our customer base to the point where, their budgets allow and their environments need, and the relationship is there, for us to do those kind of things.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, they that vCIO service, I think it's something very critical that many small businesses don't even know they need or the power of. Do you see a version of your business where that service starts overtaking your traditional blocking and tackling MSP business? Any guesses, any thoughts on what that ratio might look like, 2 or 3 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, I've given some thought to this recently too, because that whole "what got you here won't get you there," and then I'm listening to Blue Ocean Strategy right now. I've been through about a year and a half, 2 years of just consuming a bunch of business books, right? But Blue Ocean, Red Ocean type stuff. MSP's a red ocean, 100%. If you're out there just doing support, break, fix, all that kind of stuff, there's just so much competition. You end up with everybody racing to the bottom dollar, and I can't stand in those rooms and win. I won't ever stand in those rooms and win. So then that blue ocean for me becomes more of a consulting and advisory thing, because we are unique. I don't know of any other MSPs that carry the level of experience and pedigree that we have across disciplines and years of experience and depth and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's something that, if we look at everybody in our business carries a unique ability. But if we look at us as an aggregate, what is IntegriTech's unique ability? I think there's definitely something to that, where that consultative approach, because that's, there's really, I think a lot more dollars to be captured there than what we really even realize right now. And if we can get in those rooms and meet those people, and there's a ton of value to them, which then turns into revenue for us. And MSP is not, we're not going to crush it. It's not going to go away. It's there. It's a stable, steady thing. But how can we be different, and how can we attract the type of client that we want, and how do we serve them better? I think that definitely is a key strategy. As we talked about all the growth. I'm the visionary, right? I can go all day on all the ideas. That is something that I've been rolling around in my mind a lot lately, is that CIO piece of what's a slice of time cost. Rather than go spend $200,000 on a CIO for your small business, you're an engineering or whatever type company, and you've got 50 employees and you need this tech forward something. Go pay for a slice of time from somebody who, not just me either, right? I mean, you get me, you can get Jason, and you'll get a slice of Jason's time. But any question you ask me gets bounced off of 5 other dudes that got combined 58 years of doing this stuff across infrastructure and software development and, all these other kind of things, that we can come back with a collective answer and a response that you can't even get with one guy, let alone for a $200,000 salary, for 5 guys for something like that. So the value, it's just them understanding that value. So that's kind of what the homework I have right now is, like, how do we convey that? We have a marketing firm we're working on together. Like, how do we, package this into a SKU where they understand what they get when they get a slice of time? And, it's going to have to be, I think, a ratio. I can't be a vCIO for 50 companies, but Jason can do it for half a dozen. And if I do half a dozen companies and we can have a contract value that makes sense for us, then I think the value is heavily in the favor of the customer in that setup.
Do me a favor, and I know we'll start winding down here in a moment, Jason, but tell me more about this Blue Ocean, Red Ocean. I'm not familiar with this book. It sounds really interesting.
Oh, yeah. So, Blue Ocean Strategy, I can't recall the name of the author, but it talks about these markets and how you do an analysis on things to stand out and build your own blue ocean. So you look at it talks really about, like, what are your customers? So look at MSP and then look at the customers, then look at who's not that customer, like who's just that outer ring. And so maybe that in this world where VCS, so use this for an example. So MSP customers just need a lot of break fix and just IT support kind of things. If you have a company that has internal IT and you've got, a guy that's your director that's got 7 or 8 years of experience doing some pretty good IT stuff. He was maybe a network engineer. He came in, he grew through business, and now he's a director, and he hired a help desk guy. So you got 2 guys internal for IT. They're probably not a customer for MSP, right? For your break fix. They're going to, quote, handle all of that. And they do the day to day. What are they missing? Like, what is that other ring, that blue ocean? What is that need that we can go meet? Well, they don't have the experience that we could bring that would help give them the guidance, that would help give them, even also, you could look at it from a co-managed perspective too, for extra capacity, for that. And co-management's a thing for MSP, but I think there's ways you can approach it that make it a little bit more blue. Again, that consultative, visioneering kind of thing that we can help them with. But yeah, I mean, I'm not quite through the book. It was, I've done several business books over the last several years. This is one that a buddy of mine, flipped to me like 2.5, 3 years ago, and I just never got around to it. I've done a ton of the Dan Sullivan stuff lately. Liz Wiseman, with multipliers and impact players. It's, just things about teams, things about, the 5 dysfunctions of a team was one that we did right when we kicked off EOS. We did the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And so, but yeah, Blue Ocean it's really interesting because it's like, as an MSP, this is what you do. But really, if you think about it, like MSP, they're really great at technology, and technology drives everything. So what can we use that to go do our own Blue Ocean thing with over here? Me and Alan have these visions of, like, technology is like a light switch nowadays. So why do these projects come out of the ground for construction and not have data already pumping through the building whenever it's not even ready to be leased? Like, before it even leases, like, you get these shopping malls and all this kind of stuff. Like, why is it that electricity runs through it, but data doesn't run through it? It's like, what can we go build Blue Ocean that'll solve that? because right now those construction companies are that outside ring that they're not customers of technology companies necessarily. They may do a minimum amount of data cable or this or that. But how cool would it be if you fired open, 10 shotgun spaces and IntegriTech had a little closet in the corner with dual WAN running to it with a full stack of supported infrastructure. And then your leasee moves into slot 3 and just makes a call and says, I need this Wi-Fi to pop up with my brand and blah, blah, blah. And we just do it because it's already there. Like
Right.
that. I don't know of anybody doing that now. I would love to figure out, how we can go find that blue ocean for those kind of things. And there's tons of that, right? That's that visionary piece of me that like looks and thinks about this stuff all the time. Technology is not going away. It's getting more and more prevalent in our daily lives. I think that there's an immense amount of opportunity, almost unlimited what you can do with it, because it drives everything that we do. I just want to figure out what we used to get charged with back in the day at corporate. I go back to a lot of old corporate stories. My old CIO would tell us, it needs to be Google Smart and Fisher Price Simple. That's it. When it comes down to it, it really needs to be Google Smart and Fisher Price Simple. So if I can make building automation and make building data systems and Wi-Fi and all that, Google Smart, Fisher Price Simple, and make it cost effective, then why would a developer not want to put a system like that in? Because it attracts, people to come in and rent your space because it's handled. I mean, how hard it stinks to go start a business, open a store, do a thing. Well, then it stinks even harder to have to like get a hold of your IT company or get a hold of your telco to go, when are you going to be here for my install? Well, I'll be here this day, all day at some point, stuff like that. If that's all done and you make a phone call and it just like pops up over your head, then cool. We can totally do that.
Oh, I'm sold. That sounds awesome. Yeah, you truly are a visionary. There's no shortage of thoughts and strategies, running through your brain. That's for sure. Well, good stuff, Jason. Well, I really appreciate the conversation. This has been fun for me. Hopefully, if you're listening to this, you're thinking about some comments that you can make, you can like, you can share, subscribe. Jason, let me ask you, what as you kind of think about this 7-year journey, we're at a really great spot right now. I know it's not all sunshine and rainbows and whatnot, but as you look back, is there a fun story you can leave us with of maybe, man, I thought I knew then, I just made the 180-degree wrong decision, or a funny customer story, or something that you can leave us with to send us on back to our day?
Oh man. Let me think here. Just, I mean, a lot. I just in general, I think the whole storyline for me was being an ultimate technician that has, and I think a lot of operators are that way, right? A lot of MSP owners are like the guys that do the nerd knobs, but just not understanding how wrong I was, thinking that I had this business thing figured out, because business is so much more. It's systems and people. It's the less I do, the better we do, kind of thing. But I've made, you know, I've made bad decisions and hit the wrong keys and nuked systems before, and we've had to backpedal and figure things out. Um, but yeah, I think the overall arch, of the journey, the arc of what I've seen is just that, the who, not how aspect of it is the most important piece for me to really get a business out of this thing and not just a job. But yeah, I've got stories for days. I just coming off the cuff like that. I'm trying to think, but I can't think of anything in
I
this
love the
space
who, not
necessarily.
how.
Yeah,
I love the who, not how.
yeah.
That's awesome. Jason, where can people find you guys out there in the world?
I mean, our website's the best, probably IntegriTech.io. That's integrity and technology. And so, yeah, that's probably the best place. We just got it revamped. Like I say, we engaged that marketing company, so they're helping us out. They just got that launched. We're getting some photo shoots done soon to get some more personal type stuff on there. We got some a photographer coming by that'll it's templated right now with stock pictures, but that'll all change soon. But yeah, that's the best way to get a hold of us. Reach out to us, and we can engage them in whatever. I'm happy to. I mean, I've had people reach out on the sales side because I was a testimonial for the sales stuff that we've done. I've had people reach out from across the country asking about our experience with them too. So, other operators around the country, whoever hears this, whatever, if they're open to a conversation, I'd love to learn from them, honestly, just to hear what works there and how they've scaled, or if I can be any type of a sounding board and be of any value, then that would be, that'd be great.
Outstanding. Well, right on, Jason. Thanks again, everyone else. Hope you enjoyed your time here today. Get back to work, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks, Jason.
I appreciate it.